The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
I think I've got the right co-host on today's program to ask the following question. Adrian, is there any way to keep from catching a child's illness? A child that lives in your house, I should specify. I'm not like a pervert that hangs out at a park. A child that lives in my own house. There's no way around it, right? Anything that they get, you just get. You're screwed.
Yes. Dan, I have two kids, a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. My 5-year-old, was in daycare, and he caught everything.
Oh.
I mean, I felt like he was more sick than he was healthy. My 1.5-year-old, my mom watches her, so she's not in daycare, never, ever gets sick. So you're absolutely right, Dan. There's nothing you can do. The best way I tried to look at it is that your boy's going to have a very healthy immune system. He's going to be very strong. That's the best way I can look at it.
Which is good, because I was like kind of bubble boyed by my folks when I was a little kid. I'm a very delicate flower. Anything that sweeps through, I get. You know what, actually, by the way, this is Fantasy NBA Today. I'm Dan Vespers. He's Adrian Benjamins. We're talking kids here at the outset, because at some point between this morning and this evening, we're recording the show late on Monday night, something kind of set in on me here, and I'm really doing my best to power through. I don't actually hear it right now. My voice sounds okay, and I hope that it'll hold through the rest of the podcast, but I got like a weird laryngitis thing setting in that I'm guessing my kid probably had, but how do you even know if a 2-year-old has laryngitis? There's they scream everything. So anyway, we're going to plow our way through. The other thing that I thought was interesting, for one, I'm going to make Adrian do a lot of talking after I get through this little opening riff, but Adrian Benjamins shaved his beautiful little punum, and I just got to look. I said punum. That's Yiddish, by the way. I got to look at him, and he is like, look at this handsome young man. He is not a day over 23, I swear.
Well, thank you very much, Dan, but my birthday's coming up this year. It's a big one. It's the big 40.
No, 21. I'm excited I'm excited you can buy a drink now.
I feel like I'm 30 though, Dan. I feel great. I just started working out again. I'm running, doing some weightlifting. I feel amazing. And but I think I am going through some little midlife crisis thing, because I had the urge to shave my face because I want to look as young as possible. Fantasy's a young man game, Dan, and
right.
I want to fit in with these young bucks.
That's right. It's all the running and leaping that we have to be able to do, right? That's brilliant. Well put, my good man. I still don't believe you, though. Like, there was never a moment that Adrian and I have been on a podcast together that I looked at him and I was like, oh, this dude's 4 years older than me. No chance. I still don't believe you. I was about to congratulate you on being able to go buy a beer for yourself.
So I am Filipino. We age nicely, so I think I look a little younger than I actually am, and I feel great, Dan. And age is just a number. It's all about how you feel, and I feel amazing. I'm ready to.
I'm telling you, man.
To take on the world.
I am extremely envious. I am looking at my genealogy and thinking, why couldn't have someone married a Filipino person at somewhere there? Because I am 100% Ashkenazi Jew, and from the day I turned 18, I've felt like a 75-year-old man. Luckily, I still feel like I'm 75. So, like in Jewish years, that means that I'm aging backwards. So that's I consider that a win for me.
But Dan, you have a baby face as well.
I do, yeah.
You look like a teenager.
On the exterior, I look like a teenager, but once you get right inside my dermis, I am Centrum Silver right to the core. So welcome to the show, everybody. Adrian Benjamins is the man sitting directly across a Google Hangout. I am Dan Vespers, at Dan Vespers, and at Adrian Benjamins on Twitter. Very excited that Adrian now has a Gmail account, so all of our technical difficulties are a thing of the past. And I'm also excited because we got some fun stuff to talk about on today's podcast. Namely, well, for one, we got some players we want to talk about. Adrian's always got a nice little goodie bag of player rankers to go over. But also, Adrian, you are officially the commissioner of the second ever Hoopball Dynasty League. Congratulations on your ascent to the throne.
Yes, thank you so much. I am really excited to be commissioner of this league. I'm a little nervous though, Dan. These guys, they take it very seriously. So I don't want to mess up. I want to be a good commissioner. Most of all, I just want everyone to have fun. I wanted it to be competitive. And I just hope, it's possible. I've been in leagues where there's been a lot of conflicts due to, I don't know, maybe some bad trades or something like that. So I just really hope that everything runs smoothly. I want everyone to have fun. I want everyone to have a good time. I want just to run a really good league. And, I've never really been a commissioner of a league like this. So I'm a little nervous, Dan.
I think everything's going to be great. Number one, it's our second Hoopball Dynasty League, so there is a little bit of experience. Actually, the two commissioners of the first Hoopball Dynasty League are going to be players in yours, so there is a nice couple of resources there should you need them, but I don't even think it's going to come up. The reason we bring this up is it's sort of two or threefold, frankly. Number one, we have a forum thread for those of you that might be interested in joining this league. It's basically a wait list. Everybody in the forum thread, I've been going through the names one by one and sending out invites into this league. And if they reply within 48 hours, they're in. If they don't, they lose their spot. Right now, 16 of the 24 teams are full in this Dynasty League. I believe there are about 9 people on the forum list for the remaining 8 spots. And somebody had a friend. So maybe it's like 10 people right now on the list for 8 spots. So if you want to get on the waiting list, it's not a bad time to do so. Go to hoop-ball.com, click on the forums tab, and go into the Hoopball Dynasty thread. It's the thread is titled, I believe, New Official HB Dynasty League. Get your name on the list. That way, if any of those 10 names drops out, then you move one seat closer. And I think if 2 of those names drop out, then you could actually get into the league. So as of this moment, it's very close. The waiting list, then we could probably roll that over, Adrian, for anybody that either drops out before the season starts or potentially drops out after 1 year in the league. Spots always open up in Dynasty Leagues. They exist forever, and no one can simply be in a league forever. It doesn't work that way. Someone will inevitably drop out. So head on over, check out that thread if you want to be in the Dynasty League. And I will also use this opportunity to mention that all official Hoopball leagues are still taking entrants, and we will for the better part of 2 months. We are already at 96 people in our Hoopball leagues. The great Neil Rochlani is doing placement on those, and I think I may have broken the poor lad because it's crazy. We had 120 last year in the entirety of our sign-up season, and we're more than 75% of the way there, and we're not even into the second week of August yet. So there are 2 ways you can do that as well. Go on Twitter, tweet at myself, at Dan Bespris, and at Ball with Neil, BALLWITHNEIL. Send us a note. Let us know what type of league you'd like to be in. We got Roto head-to-head, $50 leagues, and free leagues available on both sides. They're all 9-cat this year. Next season, we might open up some new flavors of leagues, but we're trying to streamline it. You can also go to another forum thread and put your name in for the Hoopball leagues as well. Those don't have a cap. We'll just take entrants until people stop entering them. And those of you that are in those leagues are basically going to be the in crowd. You guys are going to be a part of everything that happens at Hoopball. You're going to have a pipeline to me, to Adrian, to Neil. So it's a cool way to get involved, and it's a cool way to compete against some really, really stiff competition, the Hoopball faithful. So that was reason number 1 for bringing up Dynasty Leagues. And reason number 2 is that, Adrian, I am truly a Dynasty novice. I'm not in the Hoopball Dynasty Leagues. I'm not going to join them because, frankly, I don't have any time as it is. But you're solid at these things. There's a reason that you're commissioning the league, and I was just thinking maybe you could give a couple of kind of big picture thoughts on how to handle a first-year Dynasty draft. I've actually been getting questions on Twitter about it, and I always have to redirect them to you or Eric Ong or someone like that. How do you prepare for a dynasty draft? I assume it's different than a traditional redraft league.
Yeah, well, Dan, I think the biggest mistake that people make in dynasty drafts is they're so focused on the long term, meaning they really overvalue young players, youthful guys, that they'll pass over a guy who, let's take LeBron James, for example. He's over 30. They'll really lower his value just because of his age. And I think the biggest mistake that people make in the first year of a dynasty draft is, you're still trying to win right now. So, even though I definitely am going to be fading guys like Dirk Nowitzki, Dwayne Wade's a guy, of course, we won't touch these guys that are on the verge of retirement. But don't overvalue the young guys too much. Luka Doncic is a guy who might go in the first round in some crazy dynasty leagues just because he's so young. There's so much hype on him. People want the guy who's going to be good 5 years down the line. But don't forget, you're playing a season right now. So I think that's the biggest mistake that people make is they just completely put too much value in the young guys.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I guess, and it the way you explain it, Adrian, here's how I'm hearing it in my head. It's almost like the never-ending battle between people who want high draft picks and people who want players that are already good. The mystery of the high draft pick always seems to sort of titillate the GMs of the NBA or baseball or football or whatever it might is. Oh, it could be anything. It could be the greatest player of a generation. But more often than not, draft picks don't turn out to be the greatest player of a generation. So if you have an opportunity to get said greatest player, it seems like you still should. I mean, LeBron James, I thought was an interesting example you just brought up. He could very well still be in an 8-cat league at least, he could still be a first-round guy for another 2 or 3 years. If you miss out on someone giving you first-round value in a dynasty league, is there any way to actually win a 24-team dynasty league? Don't you need to have somebody who's returning top 15 value on that particular season? Like, it seems like it'd be almost impossible to win a league that deep without someone putting up really big numbers to kind of carry your team a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. But, there are quite a few guys who were young that are putting up really high value. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis. These are guys that are still pretty early in their prime. So a guy who's putting up already top 15 value that's pretty early in their prime, these guys move up in the rankings pretty high because, this is a guy that can help you compete right now, but also a guy that's going to be on your roster for years to come. So there are young guys who put up the type of value that you talk about.
So I had somebody that was asking me a couple of questions via direct message on Twitter about a first-year dynasty draft. I didn't know how to answer them, so I'm just going to turn them into mailbag questions for you. And here's what they are. Here's question number 1. I have the 12th pick, I believe, is in a 20-team league, I believe is what the gentleman was specifying. I had to put a few direct messages together to get all the information. 12th pick in a 20-team league with the choice of Victor Oladipo, Donovan Mitchell, or Ben Simmons. I think we're on the table at that point. Let me just make sure that there wasn't anybody else out there. I think he may have said at one point that Russell Westbrook was still on the board. Okay, so let's do those 4 guys, and then we'll do it with and without Westbrook. Ben Simmons, Victor Oladipo, Donovan Mitchell, Russell Westbrook. Which of those 4 would you take in a dynasty draft at 12? And obviously, this is a first-year draft because those guys are still on the board.
Well, okay, so all 3 of those guys
8-cat, by the way. Sorry, 8-cat.
Okay, that actually makes a really big difference because then we're taking turnovers off the board, which helps a lot of these guys out. So all 3 of these guys kind of have similar value, Dan, where they're early in their prime or they're really early in their career. all three guys are potential all-star players, right? I mean, like Victor Oladipo is already there. Donovan Mitchell right there. Ben Simmons. I mean, the sky's the limit for all three of these guys. So their value is all very close. It's just kind of personal preference. I mean, I'm a big Donovan Mitchell fan, but this is more of just personal preference. I would go Donovan Mitchell just because I enjoy watching him so much, and I'm just such a big fan. But you can make a case for any of these guys. Like, this would be a different comparison if one of these guys was like in the middle of their prime, right? Or if one of these guys was towards the end of their prime, or, you know, all three guys even play a similar position where they're all like the primary ball handler for their team. So you're even going to get similar stats from all three guys. Probably, you know, if you're hunting threes, Ben Simmons, you're going to take off of that list. But for me, I would go Donovan Mitchell, but I mean, you can easily go either of those guys.
So what if Westbrook is still on the board there? Is he, I mean, he's been in the league for a little bit yet, but it does still seem like he has at least a few good years left in his tank.
You know, I think the overall ranking is so close where you would probably move Westbrook to the bottom of that list. For me, just
because he's
age.
older.
I mean, Dan, if we were just taking the dynasty thing off the table, what Westbrook likely is going to finish, around the 10 range for 8-cat leagues. I imagine Victor Oladipo is going to be just behind him. Donovan Mitchell maybe around behind him, and Ben Simmons right there as well. So for me, you got to take into account the age there. And for me, that value difference is worth taking those younger guys there.
Yeah, Russell Westbrook, by the way, he'll be 30 during the first month of this NBA season. So he's not an old goat, but he is certainly, one would assume, past the midpoint, a guy that's been in the league since 2008. I ended up suggesting Victor Oladipo. You know, like you said, I think you could make a case for many of them. I just liked Victor because he was sort of already there, but also not particularly old. So it felt to me like you could almost still get like another 5 or 6 years of really impressive play out of him without the fear that he would kind of fall off, because he just turned 26, so he's still he's just entering his prime. Maybe he doesn't have quite the ceiling of a Ben Simmons, but kind of already in that. I don't know. You know me, if I was in a dynasty league, I'd end up trying to win every year, and that would be completely my undoing. Here's question number 2 I got from this same gentleman. He did end up taking Victor Oladipo, by the way. His second pick now is at number 29, and he has the choice of Rudy Gobert, Miles Turner, or Kemba Walker. Who do you lean in that one?
Well, he took a guard to start, so I would definitely go a big. And Dan, I still believe in Miles Turner. I think Miles Turner, why I'd lean him over Rudy Gobert is I like he's got a higher ceiling to me just because he's got that outside shot. He could possibly add threes. I don't think that'll ever be the case for Rudy Gobert. So I would lean Miles Turner there.
Interesting.
Now, you know, if I wouldn't have a problem if he wanted to go Rudy Gobert as well, but I just kind of think that Miles Turner in the long run may have a higher ceiling.
So it sounds like you
Rudy
and I,
Gobert.
the one thing where I felt like I may have got this one right was I kind of told him I wouldn't draft Kemba Walker here. Not that he's old. He's only 28, but he's been in the league for a little bit. He's a guard, and we've kind of seen what the peak is. And also he already had a guard, and you figured he would probably end up with a guard just because these primary ball handlers tend to be the guys at the top of the list as well. If you add one other tenant, and I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, and then we're going to do some player ranking. If you had one other tenant for a first-year Dynasty League player, what would it be? Is it try to win the first year? Is it try to game plan for the second year? Is there any stashing involved? Is it trying to move picks for a following season? I mean, there's so many things you can do. I legitimately have no idea where I'd even begin with this. And so, you know, maybe this is too difficult of a question, but if you did have one other big big thing that you would convey to somebody, what would it be?
So I think that all depends on how your draft goes. So, in this Dynasty Hoopball League, it's a 24-team league. If you're drafting at the very end in 24, you may get a young guy. After your second pick, you might get another really young guy. At that point, you may lean more towards the future. Now, if you have a top 3 pick, you end up with and you end up with an Anthony Davis, a James Harden, a Giannis. I mean, these are guys that can help you win right now. That might be the way to go. Dan, I play in one of these Red Rock Dynasty leagues. We're in year 3. It just so happened, this is a 30-team league. It just so happened I didn't get a real point guard, like an assist first point guard. Like my point guards were, guys like Avery Bradley and Jordan Clarkson, guys that don't get you assists. Halfway through my draft, it dawned on me I need to completely punt that category. So the way my draft shaped up, the way it took form, you kind of have to go with it. You know what I mean? So how your draft, the way that it kind of takes form is the way you're going to go about for the future.
All right. Fair enough. To be continued. We'll talk a little bit more about Dynasty stuff on this podcast going forward because, well, Adrian knows what he's doing, and he's commissioner of the Hoopball Dynasty League. Please do head over to the Hoopball forums, hoop-ball.com. Click on the forums tab. Join up either our Dynasty waiting list or any of our traditional Hoopball leagues. All right, Adrian, what do you got? Let's do some player stuff.
So, Dan, I was right now at the moment, I'm building my ranking sheet. And as I do this, I always come across 2 or 3 players that make me pause. I have to really think about who I like more. And I like to jot these guys down because I think they make interesting ranking player debates. So I wrote 5 down and I want to run them by you. I want to know what you think. First one, who would you rank higher, Dennis Smith Jr. or Deangelo Russell?
Oh, God. Oh, my Lord. Look, this is what you're doing to me. Oh, my God. You're doing this one to me right out of the chute, huh? Okay. Just for this coming season?
Yes.
Deangelo Russell. And it's purely an experience thing. Because if Russ stayed healthy this last year, he most likely would have been inside the top 100. I don't know that he will stay healthy. It does seem like he has a chronic knee thing that's just not going away. Maybe he shakes it. Maybe they figure out a way to kind of, from a health perspective, they can kind of moderate how he goes through a year. But they want to give him a shot. They want him to take the reins a little bit. And with Dennis Smith Jr., there are some gaping holes, kind of the rookie stuff. And obviously he's got his leaping ability, and he was one of those hype guys coming out of summer league and preseason that didn't even come close to living up to those marks because he was a medium volume sub 70% free throw shooter. He was a pretty high volume sub 40% field goal guy. He was 39.5% from the field. And yeah, he had some popcorn stuff. He had 15 and 5 and 1.5 3-pointers, but 3 turnovers per game as well in 69 games. He started to deal with some knee stuff at the end of the year. So really just from an age perspective, Dennis Smith Jr. is, he won't turn 21 until late November this year. And Deangelo Russell, I mean, this is like, you're forcing me to pick between 2 very fibrous vegetables here, the types of things that I'd never choose to eat in my normal daily diet. But Deangelo Russell will be, what? He'll be like 22 or 23 instead of 20. And in the games he did play and was out on the floor, he also was at 15 and 5, but he was a 74% free throw shooter and a 42% guy from the field. So just that little bump for him, to me, puts him ahead of Dennis Smith Jr. But can I also add at the end, I ain't drafting either of these clowns.
I thought you would feel that way. I know both these guys kind of have that feel in common where they're kind of inefficient.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, they've got those holes in their game. I, like you, leaned Deangelo Russell slightly over Dennis Smith Jr. For me, he just feels a little safer. He feels a little more like the proven commodity. But I do kind of feel like Dennis Smith Jr.'s got that mystery box feel to him. Like he could be the higher ceiling guy. And the other thing that I kind of like about Dennis Smith Jr. is, if Deangelo Russell struggles, there's guys there that can replace him. Spencer Dinwiddie, a guy who played really well when Deangelo Russell went down, would not be that surprising if Deangelo Russell struggles for them to give the starting job to a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie, where I feel like Dennis Smith Jr. is really locked into that point guard. They do have like guys like JJ Barea there in Dallas, but I do agree with you. I do think Deangelo Russell, he just kind of feels a little safer.
That was a mean one to start with. That was straight up mean.
Okay, so let's move on to number 2. So, Dan, we've talked a lot this offseason about Kevin Love. I know you're really high on Kevin Love. Now that LeBron James is gone, we feel like
you're letting me put the Pepto away. That's very kind of you to let me put the Pepto away for this one.
So, Dan, you're on the board. It's your turn to pick. You're looking for a power forward. Who do you like better, Kevin Love or Draymond Green?
8 or 9 cat.
Let's go 9 category.
I think, oh man, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm going Kevin Love. And it comes out of my mouth and then I think, how do I jam that right back in my mouth? But I think I'm going Kevin Love because there is sort of no universe where Draymond Green can get inside the top 10. And there is a universe where Kevin Love can get inside the top 10. And I don't know that it's happening anymore because obviously, these guys age and it's a weird thing. I like I said, I always assumed you were like 22 looking at your face, but you're an old man like me. So we watch these guys play and for some reason in my mind, they don't really age. Like we get older, but they should stay the same age. I sort of Matthew McConaughey him a little bit right there. So yeah, obviously Kevin Love, he's not the spring chicken he used to be. He'll be 30 for this season, which is not brutally old, right? Like guys at 30 can still put up pretty decent numbers. Questions for Love, of course, are health. He hasn't played a full season in 3 years over his entire career, which I think is now about a full decade. I think he's played what you could call 5 out of 10 healthy NBA seasons. So, that's a pretty risky 50-50 proposition. But there was a time where he was the lead dog on a team and averaged 25 and 15. I mean, that's insane, even without defensive stats. It's a funny comparison, Adrian, and I really like this one, actually, because he and Draymond Green are almost like exact opposites in terms of what they provide from a fantasy appeal, where Kevin Love is going to get you a bunch of scoring stuff. He can go, he and Draymond could both put up some rebounds, but Love could go huge on rebounds. Neither one of them is going to be all that great from the field. Draymond's not a great shooter, but Kevin Love, high volume free throw guy, especially now moving back into that lead seat. Big time 3-pointers, minimal defensive stats. Turnovers, never really all that bad. Meanwhile, Draymond Green doesn't score, can't shoot, not great from the foul line. Big-time defensive stats, assists, and rebounds, and that's his kind of weird makeup. But he's also been kind of prone to sitting things out a little bit lately. I don't know how many games this last year he was truly hurt, where he just could not suit up, but he did miss a dozen games. He only played 70 games this year. He was dinged up. They rested him. I think the Warriors are going to do a lot of resting this season because those guys have played a ton of basketball. And so I don't think that the split in games played is going to be that significant. I think you might see like 68 out of Kevin Love and like 71 out of Draymond Green. And so I'm going K-Love for the upside in this one. He could legitimately be a top 10 guy on a per game basis. And if you give me 65 to 70 games of that, that's a second round value.
Yeah, I agree. I went with Kevin Love. So I was going to make the argument about Draymond Green resting, and I owned Draymond Green in a lot of leagues last year, and it was very aggravating to see him miss games where I felt like he was healthy. And as you mentioned, I think we're going to see a lot more of that this season. I think we're going to see a lot of the Warriors resting games. And I really like that Kevin Love is like the alpha guy on his team. He's going to be the main man on his team, the primary scorer, where Draymond Green, he's got to share the ball with 4 other all-stars on this team. And really wondering too.
You said 4 and it freaked me out for a minute. But then, like, oh my God, he's completely right. Sorry, continue.
At the beginning of the year, I think Draymond's going to be great. Really curious what happens later in the year when they get a healthy Boogie Cousins and they have to get him going. How much is that going to take away from a guy like Draymond Green? We know that Boogie Cousins, he's a high usage player. So it's got to take some away from Draymond Green. So I like you, am leaning Kevin Love. I think, as you mentioned, he can finish as a top 10 guy. I don't think it's really possible, as you said, for Draymond Green to finish as a top 10 guy. And then lastly, I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, let me jump in on one thing on the Warriors side. You know why I love all this weird rest talk? I think Steph Curry is going to be pissed this year. I don't think he wanted to miss all those games last season. He was, frankly, on his way to finally getting himself a Finals MVP, and then he crapped himself in what was that, Game 3? So I think you're going to see an irritated Steph Curry who's going to insist on playing as many games as possible, and barring, JaVale McGee's not on his team anymore, so barring a teammate blasting him in the knee and knocking him out for the last 6 weeks of the year, I think you're going to see a Steph Curry 75-game season. I feel like there's a really legitimate shot. You could draft him this year at 5, 6, or 7, especially in a 9-cat format, and he could give you top 2 kind of value. So I really like Steph Curry. So I don't want to dog all the Warriors. I think KD is a really tough guy to own because of his injury stuff. Draymond Green because he's exhausted. Klay Thompson, he's probably pretty safe. He's generally pretty safe. But I think Steph is due for kind of I'm not actually injury prone. Please stop saying this. I've been unhurt for 5 years in a row before this last season kind of bounce back year. So just wanted to throw that in there. I love Steph Curry as an underrated first round pick.
All right, Dan, let's move on to the third player ranking debate. I've got 2 centers for you to choose from here.
I choose JaVale McGee.
So I think you'll like these 2 guys more than JaVale McGee.
How dare you?
Who do you like between Clint Capella and Andre Drummond?
That's a really good one. Boy, those 2 guys are going to be close this year. Those 2 guys are going to be real close. I feel like and I don't have the rankings in front of me, but I feel like they were within 5 spots of each other this season in 9-cat anyway. That's not true. They were about a round apart.
So, Dan, there's a lot of offseason buzz going on with Andre Drummond right now. There's a lot of talk that he's slimmed down.
Oh, yeah.
I was reading something online that he's been shooting a lot of threes. I read that he doesn't leave the gym every day until he makes 200 corner threes a day. So, I mean, we hear this all the time, especially around this type of year. These players are adding threes to their game. We heard it last year with a guy like DeMar DeRozan supposedly was going to start shooting threes.
They did make a couple more.
Yeah. So, I feel like these guys are having 2 different off seasons. Clint Capella, he just got signed to that deal with the Rockets. I don't know, Dan. This one I was really torn on.
I think I'm going Drummond, although if I'm drafting Andre Drummond, I'm not really looking for a guy knocking down 3-pointers. I'd rather him hit 53% of his shots. And, he actually was a better free throw shooter than Clint Capella this last season. So that that was really the difference between the two guys. Capella was better from the field. Drummond was a better rebounder, better steals numbers. Capella very slightly better in blocks, and then Drummond outshot him at the foul line. Too many, by the way, too many free throws for Drummond. So he actually, I think, may have had a larger negative in that department just because he was taking 5 a game. But I'm going Andre Drummond. They like running some high post offense through him. He'll get you some assists. He is truly the best rebounder in the NBA right now. DeAndre Jordan has taken a little bit of a step back as he's grown older. I know that they were almost neck and neck in that department this season, but I think Drummond edged him by about half a rebound a game. The steals are pretty cool. Most people don't realize how many steals he gets. They look at him as a big man, and he put up a massive year. I don't know that he gets back to number 22 in a 9-cat format, but he does seem like he has the better ceiling over Capella, because there's just never going to be a world where Clint Capella is a focal point of the offense for that team. He's going to be a role guy. He's going to get his slam dunks. He's going to block some shots. Steals will probably come down for Clint over the course of his career as the kind of the speed comes down slowly. Maybe not this season. So I lean Drummond on this one.
Yeah, so I agree with you again, Dan. I lean to Drummond, and one of the main reasons why I went with Drummond is his assists really surprised me last season. He ended up being a pretty decent passer for a center. And very similar to Clint Capella, the blocks and the rebounds should be there. And I think Andre Drummond's going to give you more points. He's, I feel like Capella's like that third or fourth option on the Rockets, where Andre Drummond's, he's more of a focal point for that offense as far as like the scoring option goes. But I'm leaning Andre Drummond slightly. I like what I'm hearing about his offseason. If he does somehow become a good outside shooter, it would definitely improve his fantasy value as well.
Hashtag muscle watch. Hashtag muscle watch. You got to hashtag
it. Although I definitely need to see it to believe it. I've heard it so much. So
yeah, it's garbage. Yeah. All right, try to come up with one where we're going to disagree, and that'll be the one we end on.
Okay, let's do one more, even though I do have 2 more, but let's do one more. 2 point guards. What do you think of Jeff Teague and Mike Conley?
Ooh. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, you've tickled me with this one. I feel like I almost need a minute to go back and look and see what Mike Conley did in the past. I think I'm going Conley. So I realize that this question is really about in a vacuum, but I think Conley's going to be the better deal this season. I think he's going to be the better value because I believe that people will wildly underrate what he could give them over the course of an entire season. He hasn't been healthy much, but he took last year off by all accounts. He never got right, and Memphis just tanked for the year. He was coming off a career season in almost every respect the previous year. He averaged 20 points, 6 assists, 1.3 steals, 2.5 3-pointers on 46% shooting. Jeff Teague is just in kind of a bad spot in Minnesota. Not that, he can't excel with that club, but he's behind 3 other guys in the pecking order. And for Mike Conley, if he's truly healthy, he could actually be the number 1 option in Memphis, and he was 2 seasons ago. So I don't think you draft Conley necessarily ahead of Teague. I think Teague will probably come off the board maybe just ahead of Mike. But I think at the end of the year, I think Conley probably has the better numbers, and I think you can probably draft him later as well. Please tell me we disagree on this one.
We finally disagree on one, Dan.
Outstanding.
And although I do agree with your take on Mike Conley, for me, I've owned Mike Conley the last few seasons, and both seasons he let me down in a big way. Now I have a bad taste in my mouth. I am off this guy. More of a personal preference. 2 seasons ago, he missed about 6 to 8 weeks due to an injury. Mm-hmm. I ended up trading him in a few leagues. Hurt me bad. Last season, I drafted him around the 4th round range. Missed the whole season last year. And now this guy's I will not touch this guy. I don't trust him. It's more of an injury concern. I just don't trust this guy. And I do agree with you that he's probably got, he feels like on his team, he's the safer guy as far as usage and as far as minutes go. Although Jeff Teague does play for Coach Tibbs, and Tibbs does like to ride his starters pretty hard. But Jeff Teague needs to share the ball with Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins. So Mike Conley has a lot less competition there, but just because he's burnt me so bad in the past, I'm going Jeff Teague here.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Teague is definitely the safer play of the two. There's something about guys that have burned so many people where I feel like there's going to be a weird value built in. You'd probably have to draft Jeff Teague around 55 in a 9-cat format at least. Probably not that much earlier than that, I would say, in an 8-cat deal. Mike Conley, I think, falls beyond that this year. So even if they both finish at like top 60, top 55 kind of numbers, I bet you could get Conley at 75 or 80, and Teague you'd probably have to take 2 rounds earlier. So I don't know that they necessarily finish all that far apart at the end of the year, and Lord knows there is a massive risk with Conley, but that's why I'm looking at him more as a 75, 85, somewhere in that neck of the woods, where if that draft pick blows out on you, you can still pick up the pieces and go. You can recover from a missed 6th, 7th, 8th round guy. If you biff a 4th or 5th rounder, that stings a little bit more on your fantasy team. All right, I'm glad we disagreed on one. I kind of want to go out on that note. That felt right. Like we finally didn't see eye to eye, and that's better radio anyway. Adrian, thank you. Those are great names.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I'll have more on some later shows.
Ooh, what are you and Neil talking about on Friday's show? What conference are you guys moving to?
That's a good question, actually. I'm not sure where we are off the top of my head, but I think where did we leave off?
Somewhere out west.
I'm not sure, Dan. I'm not sure where we are.
Well, then in that case,
been a blur.
Tune in on Friday because somebody's going to talk about something. Tomorrow, I'm going to dig back into the Vegas season win totals, working on my handicapping sheets on that. I'll talk to Neil on Thursday's podcast. Neil, much like myself, massive betting degenerate. So we'll talk about season win totals there. We'll get some of his top picks. And then, as you just heard a moment ago, Adrian and Neil will talk about stuff on Friday. He is Adrian Benjamins. I am Dan Baspers. Go sign up for some of our leagues. Hope you enjoyed some Dynasty talk for the first time on this podcast ever. Yes, that's right. We debuted a new topic on today's show. Have a lovely Tuesday, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.